Okay, I'm going to try and explain to you how restricted this case truly is under ACC Crown and Government. Once you instigate fear and violence, it's you're hiding behind that, and you're literally carrying out the actual crimes against your victims. But then you're playing a blame the victim mentality, and this is how the government works. And then you're restricted then with laws. There's no laws of criminal entrapment. There's no laws of criminal provocation anymore. You're restricted through your rights, entitlements, rehabilitation, medical and treatment needs. You're restricted because the review and appeal process is as corrupt as the day is long. You're restricted because the medical professionals are employed by ACC to carry out an actual crime against you, or to violate and rape your life and collect as much information as possible. You're restricted in all avenues of criminal accountability and justice, and that's really what the bottom line is. And they can do it all under the basis that ACC can never contract out a legislation according to the government. This is where they sell your life to an organisation and then tell you you can't contract out no matter how many crimes they commit, and the government's not protecting you from the crimes they're actually committing, which is misfeasance in public office, and not making sure that your rights are upheld. ACC review and appeal are all about supposedly upholding your rights, but as proven in my case, I've never won a review. I've never lost an appeal. And one appeal, they came to an agreement that they were going to do an inquiry, and then they reneged on that. So literally everything is chicanery, trickery and deception. Now the other actions are the government leaves you with last resorts as your only way out. That's how the fear and violence works. That's what all the attacks on your sanity are all about. It's trying to create a situation through entrapment and provocation and abuse, threats, intimidation and violence of criminally insane. That's what they try and do. And this is literally the situation that you're left in. You can't sue them because you don't have enough money to do it. You can't take public-private criminal prosecutions because you don't have enough money to do it. The government wants advocates to argue their legislation and their law, but they don't want to address the crimes they're actually committing against their victims in the process. That's supposed to be done by the police, but the police declared it an act of war against me. So literally the government has cut me off on every avenue of address for the crimes that they're actually committing in this case, and turning my life into a slave trade situation. Mexican standoffs, criminal blackmail, criminal holding to ransom, abuse, threats, intimidation, violence, harassment, criminal harassment, kidnapping, continually attacking my sanity but doing nothing to address my injuries. I didn't have a brain injury, I didn't have a mental illness, and I never threatened anybody. I was the one being threatened at all times. So the government has always worked along with ACC and all its administrations, police and all, to have this case end at a last resort. That's a life and a death sentence. Their intent is to wear you down mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically and financially. And the only thing the government is interested in is keeping control and willing to spend as much money as it costs to keep you in that kidnap situation without an ounce of rehabilitation. And then the intent is to blame you for not getting rehabilitated, blame you for asking questions, blame you. The more questions you ask, the more they attack you. You can literally do nothing. You're restricted in every way known to man. And they want you to go and have counselling, but that's only to accept the slave trade situation that you're in. It's not to write up any reports about what you've been through or what they've done to you. All the agreements that they've reneged upon, they're using them as a criminally blackmailing, holding to ransom situation. The intent in this case was always to keep my life criminally contained under ACC, and to literally spoon feed me shit or give me nothing at all because they try to get rid of me for free. Now the intent is to literally enable these criminals to walk free and get paid to do a job they don't do. So no matter which way you look at this case, the government has everything covered. That's why they repealed the laws of criminal provocation. And they do not want their victims, the likes of me, having a free voice in the media. So they've put a gagging order in my case with the media, I believe. And they're literally, they have me singled out, isolated, alienated. They've got my case managed by their lawyers in Wellington. So they're turning it into the biggest criminally blackmailing, holding to ransom situation, Mexican standoff that any victim can ever come up against. I've just asked the Minister, is ACC's agreement lawfully binding or are they not? Because according to their review and appeal, or their review process, ACC can literally throw its agreement out the window anytime it so chooses. So this is to buy time. It'll end up in court. I'm not sure that the ACC appeal process is any jurisdiction for deciding whether the agreement's legally binding or not. I mean, I suppose the judge will answer that. Because if it's legally binding, then ACC has to take it into a court of law and have it made null and void for it not to be legally binding, which they haven't done. They've just come out with these claims that broke the agreement, when in actual fact the evidence proves they broke the agreement from day one. So that's their usual standing: blame the victim, blame the victim, blame the victim, blame the victim. And that's why we're getting down to a last resort in this case, because I'm not going to bow to my attackers, my abusers, and my kidnappers. And I'm not going to be owned by an organisation who's already admitted they cannot be involved in the management of my claim. They didn't admit, they actually told me themselves. That was an admission that they couldn't be involved in the management of my claim. But police then declaring it an act of war against me, my being threatened by Crown solicitors, by judges, by ombudsmen, by CEOs, by politicians, by police. It's just, it does a lot of damage to you, and you're left with post-traumatic stress at the end of it, and you're not getting the injuries that they're causing to you addressed, because they're trying to avoid that issue as well. So you're literally in the biggest defrauding, organised crime situation that any victim could ever be placed in. And all the bullshit that the New Zealand government wants to spin the United Nations, all they want to do is, they want to avoid my case like the plague, because if my case gets in front of the United Nations, they're fucked, every last one of them. They have no arguments. It just means that they've lied to the United Nations for the last 20 years. And they're still lying to the United Nations. So my suspicion would be that they'll try and accuse me of a crime. And this is the only avenue they've got, is to accuse me of criminal intent. Whereas the crimes are actually being committed by these people through their slave trade industry and through their slave trade actions and through their defrauding actions. So we'll see what comes out of it. But if they want to continue this fucking game, the Prime Minister knows I'll only accept a Royal Commission inquiry. I won't accept anything less, or a public inquiry, one of the two. And if it's not forthcoming, then I can state with beyond any reasonable doubt that the Prime Minister thinks that she's going to hold me criminally to blackmail and ransom for the rest of my life, and I'm just going to let her go. Like, fuck I am. I never instigated violence in my life. I never started it, but I know how to finish it. And if that's what the Prime Minister and the ministers and the government choose, so be it. I won't rule it out, because you can't rule out anything of anything whenever an act of war has been declared against you and you're being held criminally to blackmail and ransom by a country under Nazi legislation and law. Their entire legislation is a disgrace. Their entire rehabilitation organisation is nothing short of a slave trade. And they've lied, deceived, manipulated, manufactured, intimidated, bullied, abused every step of the way. Now their only action is to remain silent, and they want to pay me, according to my GP, they want to just pay me and I hand in, they ordered my GP to write up a year's medical certificate, and I'm going, well, where the fuck is the rehabilitation here? So, you know, where's all the medical professionals that are supposed to be talking to me? There is no medical professionals in my case talking to me. My GP, her answer is, I've got no medical notes or medical files to go on because they've all been sabotaged and destroyed. She's been doing this for 10 years. Well, actually, she was only doing it for 7 years because it took me 7 years to almost find out that all the medical notes and medical files had disappeared. And I found it out through another GP, not my own GP. And that was hard to swallow. It was really hard to deal with, to be perfectly honest. Because ACC destroyed all the evidence of their criminalities and how many millions they spent carrying out their crimes against me. So, people, I've done everything to end this case peacefully. And the only people standing in the way of this ending peacefully is the Prime Minister and the Cabinet of Ministers. Because they're all guilty of misfeasance in public office for how they've allowed ACC to run this case. And everybody involved in this case is a criminal. They're all criminal bullies and abusers. They're violators and rapists of victims' lives. And their ultimate aim is to literally hold me criminally to ransom until I'm dead, or I reach 65 if I'm lucky. And that way then they get away with murder, and they get away with all the crimes that they commit against the victims. This case is not going away. And there's no doubt, I mean, I've already had the Northern Ireland representative for the British High Commission involved. So, and they lied to him in relation to he's getting all he's entitled to. But when you ask the question, what is he entitled to, they haven't got a fucking answer. It's like you have to go and find the answer yourself. You ask them what avenues is there to address this case. Oh, you can go and take legal advice. Fuck off. You tell me what avenues I've got, because I know the avenues I've got. The only avenue they've left me with is last resort. If I go and I take legal advice, I gotta pay for it. Right? If I fight them in their own jurisdiction, it's gonna cost me money. And I mean a lot of money. I'm talking millions. So they know they've priced me out of justice and accountability. They know they've changed the laws to prevent me from defending myself to the maximum extent practicable, unless they're standing in front of me. So everything's done now at a distance. You know, I'm open to communication and to not take this case to a last resort. So there's no reason why they can't sit in front of me and discuss the case and discuss their standing. If their standing is to hide behind ACC and the corrupt legislation and treat my case as a fucking slave case, then fuck them. They will pay the price for their criminalities. They've already wasted 20 years of my life. They've taken my quality of life. They haven't just destroyed my life, they've destroyed my children's lives and futures as well. And, you know, they've put them through a lot of stress and a lot of trauma. And, you know, you've got the Prime Minister going on about, you know, we are one, empathy and kindness. Well, I haven't seen an ounce of kindness from the Prime Minister in her 18 months in office that she's been dealing with. Everything she's been dealing with, and she's just avoided my case, and she's avoided ACC like the plague. So, at the end of the day, if she's going to continue this corruption and criminality, then fuck them. And maybe say, like, this is not a life. This is victims being held as prisoners, hostages and captives, criminally to blackmail and ransom, and spoon-fed shit. They're not compensating people, and they're not rehabilitating people. They're not addressing people's real injuries. They're manufacturing injuries so they can attack their victims and try and label them to society. And they can't label me because I've already proven beyond any reasonable doubt that I didn't suffer a brain injury or a mental illness, and I never threatened anybody. So it's all lies, hearsay, innuendo, speculation and manufacturing, but it's what they put you through to get to that point. So what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to sit here and continue to never ever get my life back to any normality? Because that's the situation. And that's the criminally blackmailing holding to ransom situation, and that's because the government, ACC, are not offering me the help, assistance, support, or protection that I deserve. And that's how they're playing it. So, what can I say? What can I do? I can, I can talk till the cows come home, but you have to be in my shoes to understand exactly what they've done to my life. And how they've gotten away with it it's beyond me. I'm going to say it just goes to prove how many criminals and how corrupt the New Zealand justice system is, and how corrupt the ACC review and appeal process is, how corrupt the medical experts are, specialists and GPs. They're all taking their instructions from an entity and the lawyers of that entity to literally fuck over every victim they can. I'm at the end of the road, people. I can't do any more than this. It's like, I don't need to be angry about it anymore. I don't need to be getting myself upset about it. All I need to do is address what needs to be addressed, if it needs to be addressed by me personally. They said it was personal, so it is personal. They declared it an act of war. They told me I better watch my back. The ombudsman told me I needed a gun to resolve this. I mean, he said, what kind of fucking lowlifes am I dealing with? And, but maybe she's correct in what she said. Maybe I do need a fucking gun to resolve it. And that's the standing of these terrorists. And this is what I've tried to avoid for 20 fucking years. While this terrorist, J.R. McGreevy, and all his colleagues filled with corruption and criminality, chicanery, state terrorism, lynch mob and vigilante behaviours, this is what they're all filled with. The only thing that matters to them is keeping control and the continual running of their slave trade. And they want to cover it up because they want to say, we're not running a slave trade. They are running a slave trade. They restrict their victims and their victims' lives and everything they do. And then after 20 years, like my case, the victim can go and do whatever the fuck they like then after that. They've already done the damage, they've already done the harm. So they're not really bothered about the victim anymore because they're not paying anything for rehabilitation, they're not doing any investigations. They're just spoon feeding the victim shite. And they're keeping control. So, there you go. I hope you understand exactly where I'm coming from. They want this to end in a last resort. I want it to end in justice and accountability lawfully, that they're preventing me from getting because they're obstructing and perverting the course of justice at all times. And they're going to continue to do so. So, if it does end in a last resort, like I did say in a court of law, violence is always a last resort. But nobody protected me or my rights when they were attacking me. The police were assisting these criminals carry out their crimes. Private investigators were paid for, security guards, you name it. Everybody could bully and abuse and threaten and intimidate and attack me violently, attack me. And nothing happened to them. They were allowed to do whatever the fuck they liked. That's how these terrorists work. So, I don't need to get angry about it. I don't need to get myself upset about it. I know the situation. I know the frustration. I know the torment. I know the torture. I know the criminal intent of these people involved. And there comes a point when you have to say enough's enough. And I don't need to get angry. I just need to say enough's enough. I'm not a stupid person who's just going to run out and blah blah blah. If I decide to fucking knock somebody over, I'll fucking do it. Believe me. It'll be there'll be no going back after that though. And we say once I lift my hand, there's only one outcome. And it's full on and it's right till the end. So that's literally the situation. I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. I'm not that way inclined. And they've looked for these provocations at every point, step and turn. But I'm not that type of person. I'm the type of person that I'll calculate what I'm going to do. And I'll fucking do it. But hopefully I won't have to calculate what I'm going to do. Hopefully the Prime Minister will have some logic, reason and common sense and show a bit of her integrity and deal with the empathy and the kindness, and we'll actually look for justice together. But if she's unwilling to do that, or she wants to give me all her bullshit excuses and ignorance and denials, then we're only left with one outcome. And but this case needs to end one way or the other. If it ends with me having my life, great. But if it doesn't, nothing fucking lost really. It's just not a fucking life that I'm allowed to live. I'm in a slave situation, and the government are the criminals. The government are the terrorists in this case. And that unfortunately is the situation. So when you're dealing with terrorists, what do? This is the whole point. They all want to go, we're the victims. They're not victims, they're terrorists. And all this contradiction of the Prime Minister about how fear and violence works. Fear and violence works because you are literally using an injured person's rights, entitlements, rehabilitation, medical and treatment needs to control the outcome of a victim by taking their life on a path that should never have went. I should never have had to see a psychiatrist. There was nothing wrong with my sanity. I should never have had my life violated and raped again and again and again and again. I should never have ended up in a prison, being threatened by judges beforehand. I should never have ended up in a mental asylum because they didn't want to video record anything. These people want to do everything behind closed doors and behind the victim's back, and then they want to cover it all up. So, it's been played out for a last resort. So the intent by the Prime Minister and her cabinet is murder of a victim, namely me. But they want this victim to commit murder on their behalf in retaliation to their crimes. I think that's literally what they're trying to do. It's all criminal provocation. It's all, it's all sadism. It's all vigilantism. It's all stalking. It's all putting the victim under siege. It's, but I think what the government has actually told everybody in society over the last 6 or 8 months is that everyone in society needs to get behind some gang of some kind, because if they're on their own, they're not going to get anywhere. So literally, that's what the government of New Zealand is trying to create, and that's the message that they're giving to society. You need to be a member of some club. Like some people will be members of the Labour Party, some people will be members of the National Party, some people will be members of the New Zealand Party, and they all stick together. Or some people will be members of a religion, Catholic, Muslim, whatever it is. Some people will be involved in criminal gangs, like the government themselves. They're the biggest criminal gang in the world. So you can understand why people join gangs. I used to always think a different way, but now I think a whole different way, that the government actually forces people into these gangs to defend themselves. Because the government are the violent offenders against their victims. So, I don't know how I worked that one out, but I did work it out that way. It took me a long time too. And people become criminals because the government works the way they do. And government, gangs don't trust police. You can understand why. They don't understand governments. They don't understand anybody. And the government literally is only interested in running the country as a company. That's what New Zealand has become. So, New Zealand is now a corporation. It's not a democracy. It's not. Everything is run as a corporation. And this is how they get away with all their crimes and criminalities. But I need to get my life back, people. All in. Whichever way it goes, I'm all in. But it's down to the Prime Minister on how this is going to go.